Isaiah 58, the nation of Israel is called out for prayer and fasting, but forgetting the poor that were all around them. Spirituality of 3 practices reduced to 2. It's the same drum, just a new hand beating it. The prophetic message is not just that God cares about personal righteousness and social justice, so you should care about both of them too. It's that righteousness and justice are inseparable. They are one and the same, and you cannot adequately express one without the other. One is the root, the other is the fruit, but it's the same tree. The hunger crisis that's being experienced by a large percentage of the world is inseparable from the few nations whose citizens consume the majority of the world's food. The global human trafficking crisis is inseparable from the $12 billion pornography industry. The unjust labor practices of the fashion industry is inseparable from the overstuffed closets of most Americans. The fruit might be hunger, justice, but the root is gluttony, righteousness. The fruit could be human trafficking, justice, but the root is lust, righteousness. The fruit could be unjust labor, justice, but the root is materialism, righteousness. You see, fruit or root, it's the same tree. Spiritual formation and social justice are interconnected. All of our personal spiritual formation is ultimately for the kingdom to come on the streets of our city. So how do you measure how you're doing in your faith? By your habits of prayer or your consistency of Bible reading? Maybe the quality of your recent moral decisions or some sense of inner peace or lack thereof. We are radical individualists in the most radically individual society in the history of the world. So I imagine most of us have chosen some individual measuring stick like that without ever defining it for ourselves. But many have summed up the prophetic message of the Bible this way. The quality of your faith will be judged by the quality of justice in the land, and the quality of justice in the land will be judged by how the weakest and most vulnerable groups in society fared while you were alive. See, the claim there is that our standing with God doesn't only rest on our private personal spirituality, but on how we stand with the marginalized. And how do you measure the health of a church, of a community of Jesus' disciples? Well, according to the prophets, that answer seems to include by how their most underprivileged neighbors are doing. So how healthy is Bridgetown Church? You see, this story is building and building to a coming Savior who's going to bring tzedakah, a kingdom that is ruled by righteousness and justice. This kingdom is freedom from anxiety, and it's healing for my body, and it's peace that surpasses understanding. It's salvation for the lost. And this kingdom is orphans and families, and the oppressed set free, and the poor dignified, and the down and out given a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th chance. And when God came and lived among us, he did not soften the prophetic message. He amplified it. In the Old Testament, 1 out of every 10 verses is directly about how we care for the materially impoverished. And in Luke's gospel, that number jumps from 1 out of every 10 to 1 out of every 6. Jesus also did not just say that God stands with the poor. He said that God is in the poor. That how we treat the poor is how we treat God.